It was supposed to be a celebration, my 30th, a milestone. But standing in the middle of that gleaming, upscale golf resort, all I could feel was out of place. My family loved this place, but it was a world I didn't belong to. Not the way they saw it, at least. I'd thrown on my usual, an oversized sweater and well worn jeans, casual, comfortable. But here, surrounded by pressed suits and sleek heels, it felt like I was wearing a neon sign that screamed, I don't belong. I was standing alone by the hors d'oeuvres, half heartedly eyeing the delicate canapes when Layla spotted me. You can't seriously be wearing that, right? She didn't even say it with a smile, just flat, blunt, like she was doing me a favor by pointing it out. I rolled my eyes and took a bite of something unidentifiable. I mean, it's embarrassing, really, she continued, undeterred. You look like you rolled out of bed. Mom's here. We're all here. Don't you want to, I don't know, fit in? I knew what she meant. This place was all about appearances. She was perfectly done up, like she stepped out of a magazine. Everything about her screamed successful. And me? I wasn't, not by their standards. Mom joined in, her tone softer, but the message was the same. Honey, maybe you should have dressed up. This is a big night for you. The sting of their words hit harder than I expected. But then Max, always the loudmouth, couldn't resist adding his 2 cents. Maybe if you stopped playing at being artsy, you'd be able to hold a real job like the rest of us. He grinned smugly. I can help you out, you know. Got connections. Get you a real gig. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forced a smile. Thanks, but no thanks, Max. Mom's right, he continued. If you want to be taken seriously, you need to get your act together, or we can't keep pretending you're part of the family. That hit like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just about clothes. They were talking about cutting me off, cutting me out. My mind raced, but I said nothing. What was the point? They wouldn't get it. They never did. So I kept quiet, staring down at the glass of champagne in my hand, trying to breathe through the heaviness building in my chest. The rest of the party went on, but I felt completely invisible. Or worse, like I was some kind of embarrassment. I hadn't even realized how many people were listening until Layla raised her voice, cutting through the chatter around the room like a blade. Her words were slow, calculated, like she was giving a speech she'd been planning all night. Let's just be honest for a second, okay? She wasn't looking at me when she said it, but I could feel every word aimed directly at me. We can't keep pretending that everything is fine, not when she hasn't done anything with her life. Her voice carried, and the heads turned. The crowd was listening now. I could feel the heat in my cheeks, the growing pressure behind my eyes. I didn't speak, just waited for it to pass. But Layla wasn't finished. She's got no real job, she went on, her voice louder, sharper now, as if she was doing the world a favor. No real goals, no ambition. You know, it's embarrassing. How are we supposed to celebrate someone who's just floating through life like this? I felt the sharp sting of every word. But I still didn't say anything. I couldn't. What would it change? She was in full swing now, and my defense wouldn't matter. I mean, it's honestly a joke. 30 years old and still trying to make it work with some, freelance stuff? No real career, no sense of direction. Layla shot a quick glance at my mother for confirmation, and Mom gave the slightest nod. Mom, the woman who was supposed to have my back. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but Layla wasn't done yet. And you know what? She said, her voice turning sweet, like she was doing me a favor now. Maybe it's time to make it official. Maybe it's time we stop pretending that she's really part of the family. I don't know about you all, but I'm tired of supporting someone who can't even get her life together. She glanced at Mom again. Maybe we should just cut her off from family functions until she gets her act together. Mom's face was unreadable, but when Layla spoke, her hand came up just for a second. A subtle gesture, almost like she was trying to shut it down without making a scene. But she didn't say no. She didn't tell Layla to stop. It was like the floor dropped out from under me. I kept my head down, trying to breathe through the lump that had suddenly lodged in my throat. I could feel the eyes on me, the weight of the room's silent judgment. Every person here, they all thought the same thing. I was a failure. No matter how hard I worked, no matter what I did, none of them would ever see it, not the way they saw themselves. But the worst part? I could see it in my mother's eyes. That flicker of doubt, like maybe Layla was right. Maybe I was just not enough. I was about to say something. I had to. But just as I opened my mouth, A voice cut through the tension, sharp and clear. "Excuse me?" All heads turned. A man stepped through the door, wearing a casual jacket, jeans, and sneakers, completely out of place in this sea of expensive suits. He smiled when he saw me. "Is the birthday girl here?" he asked, walking straight toward me with an easy confidence. I blinked, stunned for a second, but then the recognition hit. "Ethan," I said, a little breathless. Ethan was my business partner. He was a bit of a wild card. Funny, down to earth, never cared about appearances, but this was the first time he'd ever showed up to one of my family events, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen next. He grinned and pulled me into a quick hug. "Sorry I'm late. I tried to get here sooner, but you know how these things go." The whole room watched us. It felt like they were suddenly more interested in him than me. Ethan stepped back and gave me a quick nod. "Anyway, I wanted to tell you in person," he continued, still casually chatting like we were just having coffee. "Our startup just hit a $900 million valuation." There was a beat of stunned silence. It was like the entire room held its breath. "Wait, what?" Layla's voice cracked. Ethan didn't notice her shock. "Yeah, it's been crazy. We just landed a couple of huge clients. We're scaling up, hiring more people. And I've got a few meetings lined up this week for potential partnerships. It's all moving fast." My family was silent now, just staring at him. They didn't know how to process it. I could feel their eyes on me, the realization starting to sink in. I wasn't just employed. I was running a business. And it wasn't some tiny side project. This was real. Ethan caught their gaze, unfazed. "Oh, sorry, I should introduce myself. Ethan Walker. I'm the co-founder of the company. And this," he pointed at me, "is my boss. She's the one who makes all the decisions around here. She's the real genius behind it." The shift in the air was palpable. They were all still trying to piece it together. My mother's face was pale, like she'd just been slapped. Max stood there, mouth half open, and Layla, who'd been so eager to judge, looked like she'd just swallowed something she couldn't spit out. I didn't say anything. I just watched them, calm and steady, while the pieces started to fall into place. This was what they didn't know. This was the part of me they'd never taken the time to see. Ethan didn't seem to notice the way the room had frozen. He just kept smiling, looking completely at ease, like he hadn't just walked into a room full of people who had no idea who he was or what he was about to drop. "Sorry I'm late," he said to me, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Traffic, you know how it goes. Anyway, I'm here now, birthday girl. Happy birthday!" He gave me a quick hug, like we were just regular old friends catching up after a long week. I couldn't help but smile, despite the sudden rush of tension tightening in my chest. Ethan had no idea what was happening, but I could feel every pair of eyes in the room fixed on us, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. He pulled back and looked around, his voice easy and casual. "So, big news actually. Our startup just hit a $900 million valuation." He said it so nonchalantly that if you didn't know better, you'd think he was talking about the weather. The room went dead silent. I mean dead. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone just stood there staring, the air thick with confusion and disbelief. No one knew what to say. Even Layla's smug expression faltered for a split second, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. "Wait," Max finally muttered. His voice cracked like he was trying to piece together a puzzle. "What, $900 million? Your company's worth that much?" Ethan smiled like it was no big deal, still oblivious to the sudden shift in energy. "Yeah, that's right. Tech consulting company, you know? We're working with some pretty major clients right now. Big names, big projects. Everything's moving fast. It's been a wild ride, to be honest. But hey, that's what happens when you have a solid team, and she's the one that's been making it happen." I felt all their eyes on me now. They weren't staring in judgment anymore, though. It was different, like they were seeing me for the first time, but they couldn't quite reconcile what they were seeing with the image they'd built up in their heads. Ethan turned to me, still grinning, and threw an arm around my shoulder. "I mean, the way she runs things, it's amazing. All her ideas, the way she's led us through the last few years, it's no wonder we're at this point. She's the boss, after all." I couldn't stop the small laugh that bubbled up. It felt weird to hear him say it so confidently, but it was also the truth. I wasn't just some employee or artsy freelancer. I wasn't a screw-up or a failure. I ran a multi-million-dollar business. I could see my mother's face, pale, her eyes darting back and forth between me and Ethan, her lips slightly parted. I wasn't sure if she was shocked by the news or by the fact that I'd managed to keep all this from them for so long. Max's jaw was practically on the floor, his usual cocky grin nowhere to be found. Wait. Layla finally broke the silence, her voice still uncertain. You're telling us you've been working with him on this business? This startup? Yeah, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm the co-founder, actually. Ethan and I started it together a few years ago. I watched as the realization sank in. They were still trying to process what they'd just heard. The layers of judgment they'd built up were crumbling piece by piece. The woman they'd written off as nothing more than an aimless dreamer was now standing before them as a business owner, a successful one. Ethan continued, totally oblivious to the stunned crowd. She's the one who envisioned the whole thing, built it from the ground up. And now we're working with some of the biggest names in tech and consulting. You know, we've got partnerships with companies you'd recognize, huge brands, and we're looking at expanding into new markets this year. I could feel the heat in my face, not from embarrassment. No, I was past that. It was from the slow burn of satisfaction, watching my family's expectations melt away, watching them realize they'd been wrong about me. I gestured to Ethan. Ethan, this is my mom, my sister Layla, and my cousin Max. You've already met them, I think. Ethan waved at everyone, still clueless about the tension, and kept on talking. Nice to meet you all, but I've been telling her. We need to scale up. We're not even close to reaching our potential yet. The market's ripe for what we're doing. We're bringing innovation to industries that need it, and I can't think of anyone better than her to keep pushing us forward. I watched as Layla's eyes flicked from me to Ethan, then back to me. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but nothing came out. Max had his phone out, probably trying to Google the company's name or check if this was all some kind of joke. Mom, though, she was the one who looked the most rattled. Her eyes searched mine, and I could tell she was struggling to reconcile this version of me with the one she'd been criticizing for years. She didn't know what to say. She just stood there looking small. I didn't want to gloat. I didn't want to rub their faces in it, but at that moment, it felt like a victory. A quiet one, sure, but a victory nonetheless. And the best part? I wasn't the one who had to explain myself anymore. The silence hung thick in the air for a moment longer before Layla broke it. Her voice wasn't mocking anymore, just stunned. But how? How is this even possible? I mean, she glanced at me, her face twisted with confusion. You never looked or acted successful. How are you running this multi-million-dollar company and no one knew? You don't even wear designer clothes. The words stung, but I wasn't angry anymore. They were just lost. They couldn't understand because they'd built this idea of me in their heads that didn't fit the reality. They saw what they wanted to see. Ethan, of course, didn't get it. He was still on his roll, completely oblivious to the shift in tone. Well, that's the thing, he said, his voice full of admiration for me. She's one of the most dedicated people I've ever met. It's all about the vision. She's always pushing us forward. I'm just along for the ride, honestly. She's the one who comes up with the ideas, makes the tough decisions. And we've been lucky enough to land some big clients because of that. Layla looked at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. You've always been so quiet about all of this. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you share any of this? I shrugged. It wasn't about hiding anything. It was about not needing to prove anything. I didn't want people to see me for what I wore or how I acted. I wanted them to see what I could do. Ethan, still unaware of the undertones of the conversation, added, and what she's doing is amazing. We're not just making money. We're creating jobs, changing industries. We're actually working on a foundation that will bring technology and resources to underserved communities. It's part of her vision from the start. She doesn't just want to be successful for herself. She wants to make a real difference. That hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about something bigger. And I realized then how much more I wanted to focus on the foundation. That's what would define me, not the flashy cars or the clothes or the company's valuation. It was the impact we could have. The room was buzzing now. People were slowly moving closer, pulling out their business cards, asking questions about the startup, about the foundation. It was like they were suddenly seeing me as someone they could network with, someone worth talking to. The roles had shifted so fast it made my head spin. Max stepped forward, looking uncomfortable but trying to mask it. So, you work with, what, big companies? He shot a glance at Ethan, who nodded easily. Yeah, Ethan said, his tone casual. We've got some of the biggest names in tech. But what we're really excited about right now is the foundation. We're working with communities that don't have access to the resources they need, bringing technology into schools, rural areas. It's all about expanding the opportunities for people who otherwise wouldn't have them. I could feel my mom's eyes on me. She was standing a little too still, her gaze locked on Ethan like she was trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. Or maybe just trying to understand how she had missed this. Dad, who'd been silent this whole time, finally spoke. So you've been running this business, and we had no idea? And you're involved in all of this? His voice had a mix of pride and something else. Something like guilt. Like he hadn't given me enough credit. Like they hadn't given me enough credit. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone even. But I'm not just running a business. I'm building something that matters. And if I've learned anything, it's that I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I'm doing it because I believe in it. Ethan's eyes lit up, completely missing the shift in my family's mood. Exactly. She's been so focused on making it work, even when it didn't make sense to others. That's the thing about her. She's a real visionary. It felt good hearing Ethan talk about me like that. It felt like everything I had worked for, every sleepless night and every moment of doubt, was finally being seen. The guests were listening now, looking at me with a new interest. The whole narrative had flipped. Instead of the girl in jeans who didn't fit in, I was suddenly the one they wanted to know. I glanced over at Layla. She looked stunned, like the ground beneath her feet had shifted. The confident, sharp sister who always had something to say was now speechless, trying to piece it all together. My mother was standing next to her, looking rattled. I could tell she was struggling with the reality of what she had just learned, but even she couldn't ignore the way the guests had started gravitating toward me. Some were already pulling out their phones, exchanging numbers, asking about the foundation. One man in a sharp suit even slipped me his business card, saying he'd love to partner with us on a new project. They were all suddenly respecting me. It was weird, uncomfortable, but somehow satisfying. It was like I had taken back control of my own story. I wasn't just the quiet sister anymore, the girl in the oversized sweater. I was a businesswoman. I was a force in my own right. And they were finally starting to see it. The party had shifted in a way I didn't think was possible. The buzz was everywhere now. People pulling out business cards, asking about the foundation, talking shop like we were all part of the same world. The guests had turned into fans, and even my family couldn't deny the way the narrative had flipped. But then, as I was standing there, talking to a few people about the company's next steps, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around, half expecting another executive asking for my card, but it was Layla. She stood there, biting her lip, her eyes a little wide. I need to talk to you, she said quietly. I nodded and followed her toward the quieter corner of the room. I wasn't sure what this was, an apology maybe, or just more of the same judgment, but gentler this time. She folded her arms across her chest, her voice tight. I don't get it. You've been hiding this from us? All of it. How is it that this? She waved her hand around, gesturing to the crowd, to Ethan, to the company's success. How is this possible and we never knew? I let out a breath and leaned against the wall. It's not that I was hiding it, Layla. It's that you and everyone else just assumed I was, I don't know, failing. She flinched like I'd slapped her, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. You've always seen me as the one who doesn't fit in, because I don't play the part, because I don't wear the same stuff or talk the same way. You've looked at me and assumed I was stuck. And when I didn't speak up, when I didn't play the game, you took that as weakness. But the truth is, you were wrong. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. I wasn't done. You thought because I wasn't flashy, because I didn't shove my success in your faces, that I was just floating. You and Mom and Max, you've all thought that about me, that I wasn't doing anything. But the truth is, I was building something you couldn't see. I was letting my actions speak instead of my words. Her eyes softened for a moment, but there was still confusion there. I didn't think of it like that. I don't know. I just thought if you were really doing well, you'd want to show it off, right? I thought we'd see the signs, the clothes, the lifestyle, She stopped herself and shook her head, swallowing. I don't know. I don't get it. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you just say something? I could see the wheels turning in her head, the realization starting to hit. I took a step closer to her, the words coming out slower now, like I needed her to hear it. It wasn't about hiding it, Layla. It was about seeing who actually valued me for what I could do, not what I wore. It's one thing to get respect because of a title or the stuff you have. It's another to get it because of your work, your effort. I didn't want people around me who only saw the surface. She blinked, her eyes starting to gloss over with something I couldn't quite place. I never thought of it like that. I I judged too fast, didn't I? Her voice cracked. I never asked you enough questions. I just assumed. I nodded, but the words were already out there, hanging between us. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, but instead, her eyes welled up, and before I knew it, she was crying. I'm so sorry, she whispered, voice thick with guilt. I'm so, so sorry. I just. She wiped at her eyes, but more tears fell. I didn't know. I never asked. I just assumed everything. I made you feel like you weren't enough. I couldn't speak for a second. I'd never seen her like this, vulnerable, completely taken aback by the truth she hadn't even considered. I've been so stupid, she muttered, her face flushed. I thought I knew you, but I didn't. I didn't really see you at all. Not like I should have. I didn't say anything for a beat, just watched her crumble a little under the weight of everything. It's okay, I finally said, my voice quieter than I intended. You weren't the only one who misunderstood. We all make assumptions. But now you know. You see who I am? She sniffled and nodded, wiping her face again, clearly trying to pull herself together. But she didn't stop crying. I gave her a small smile, though it didn't feel triumphant, more like relieved. You didn't know, Layla, but now you do. She took a shaky breath and looked up at me. Do you think I can make it right? Can we start over? I met her gaze, my chest tightening with something that was both sorrow and hope. It's going to take time, but yeah, I think we can. She swallowed, nodding slowly. I'll do whatever it takes. And in that moment, it felt like everything had changed, not just in the room, but between us. It wasn't about proving myself anymore. It was about seeing who would stay, who would truly see me for who I was, not just what I had. Just as Layla and I were standing there, still sorting through everything, I heard Ethan's voice again. But this time, it wasn't the casual, upbeat tone he usually had. It was sharp, angry. He stepped up behind us, looking between Layla and the rest of the family, his face hard. Are you kidding me? He snapped. I turned to face him, his eyes blazing. He didn't wait for anyone to respond, instead turning to the room full of guests, his frustration evident. You people have no idea what you just did. His voice was louder now, cutting through the hum of the party. I walked in here to celebrate my business partner's birthday, and what do I find? A family publicly humiliating someone who's worked her ass off for years. There was a stunned silence in the room, but Ethan wasn't backing down. He was on a roll now. Do you even know who you're talking to? This woman here? He pointed at me, and I felt the heat of his anger like a physical force. She's built a company that's created jobs for hundreds of people. She's turned down offers from billion-dollar companies to stay true to her vision. She's out here trying to change the world, not by wearing designer clothes or acting like she's better than everyone else. She's doing it by working hard and lifting others up. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I couldn't look away from Ethan. His fury wasn't directed at me anymore. It was all about them. She's been creating a tech consulting company that's been working with underserved communities to get them the resources and training they need. He continued, his voice rising. She's launching a foundation to bring technology to schools, to people who wouldn't get access otherwise. And this is how you treat her? You make assumptions based on what she wears and how she talks, and you shame her for it. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Layla's face flushed with embarrassment, and Max was shifting uncomfortably, but neither of them spoke. They were probably still too stunned to process what was happening. Mom and Dad looked like they wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to stop Ethan, to calm him down, but the other part of me realized maybe they needed to hear it. Do you think this is easy for her? Ethan went on. Building something from nothing, working day and night, and then having her own family tear her down for not acting like someone who's already made it? He took a step closer to them. She's one of the most generous people I know. I've watched her put everything into this company. I've seen her help people who don't have anything just because she can. And you You treat her like she's failing? He turned back to me, his expression softening just a little. I don't care what you wear. I don't care if you never own a Ferrari or wear diamonds. You're out here doing the work, that's what matters, and anyone who can't see that? He shot a glance at my family. That's their problem, not yours. The room was completely still now. Guests were standing in clusters, quietly listening, watching the whole scene unfold. Ethan's words weren't just directed at my family anymore, they were being absorbed by everyone else in the room. I saw a few heads nodding. People were shifting in their seats, the shock slowly turning into something else respect. But Ethan wasn't done yet. He looked back at my family, his jaw tight. And don't think a simple apology is going to fix this. You humiliated her. You made her feel small when she's anything but. You'll need to do more than just say sorry if you really want to make things right. Layla opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Max was still staring at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Mom and Dad looked rattled, their faces pale, but none of them said a word. They didn't have the words. They were caught in the truth of it all. Ethan turned to me, his tone finally softening. I'm sorry, he said, his voice quieter now. I didn't mean to blow up on you, but you shouldn't have had to deal with that. Not here, not from your family. I smiled at him, not because I wanted to brush it off, but because I appreciated the anger. I appreciated that he saw me for what I was. I stepped forward then, trying to break the tension in the air. It's okay, I said to him, my voice steady but calm. I know it's a lot, but maybe it's what they needed to hear. Maybe it's what we all needed to hear. Ethan glanced back at my family, then back at me. He didn't speak, but the anger was still there, simmering just beneath the surface. He didn't want to let them off the hook, and part of me didn't either. But I could see they were starting to get it. Slowly, they were starting to understand. The guests were still lingering, but their expressions had changed. There was more respect now, more genuine curiosity. The whole tone of the evening had shifted, from one of judgment to one of recognition, but I wasn't done with my family. Not yet. We need to talk, I said to them quietly. My parents nodded, but I could see the heaviness in their eyes. Layla, still standing beside me, wiped her eyes again, and I could tell she knew what was coming. This wasn't just about a business anymore. It was about us. The tension in the room wasn't gone, but it had shifted. It wasn't the cold, uncomfortable silence of a family unwilling to face the truth anymore. Now, it was the quiet of people who knew they had a lot of work to do to fix what they'd broken. Mom stepped forward first. Her hands were shaking slightly, her face drawn. She avoided my eyes for a moment, then finally met them. I don't know where we went wrong, she said softly, her voice fragile. But I'm sorry. I never meant to make you feel like you didn't matter, like you weren't enough. I didn't say anything right away, just let her words hang in the air. She looked so small, so vulnerable in that moment. But I had to ask. I needed to know if she was apologizing because she truly understood what she'd done, or if it was just because the truth about my success had shattered her image of me. Are you sorry because of how you hurt me, or because you were wrong about what I've been doing? I asked it slowly, carefully, my voice low. I wasn't trying to sound accusatory, but I needed to know if they were seeing me now, or just the idea of me they had in their heads before. Mom's eyes welled up, and she stepped closer. I'm sorry because I hurt you. I was too focused on what I thought was important, on what everyone else expected. I should have listened to you, seen you for who you are, not just for what you wear or what you've earned. She paused, swallowing hard. I failed you as a mother, and I'm so sorry. Her apology hit harder than I expected, and I could feel the walls I'd built around my heart start to crack just a little, but it wasn't over. Layla was next. She had her arms folded, standing a little awkwardly, like she wasn't sure how to approach this. She'd been so confident just hours ago, but now she seemed small, unsure. I don't even know what to say, she started, voice quiet. I've judged you, and I've done it without understanding. I've looked at you and thought I knew you, but I didn't. I didn't see everything you've been doing, everything you've accomplished. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for all of it. I watched her, trying to gauge if this was just guilt talking or if she was finally realizing something deeper. You didn't ask, I said softly, not to accuse, but to make her see what I'd been trying to say all along. You never asked me what I was doing, what I cared about. You just assumed, and that made it easier to write me off. Her lip trembled, and she nodded. I was wrong. I didn't ask, and I should have. I I don't know. I thought because you didn't talk about it, it wasn't important. I took a breath, not wanting to hold on to anger anymore. It was never about hiding anything, Layla. It was about letting people see me for who I am, not for what I have or how I act. Max stepped in at that point, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by something more genuine. He looked uncomfortable, but he was trying. I wasn't the worst, was I? He asked with a nervous laugh. I mean, I don't know if I've been that bad, but I've definitely made assumptions about you. I didn't see everything you were doing, and I should have. I'm sorry. There was something about his apology that felt real, but I could tell he still wasn't sure how to really deal with the shift. I'll take it, I said, offering a small smile. But you've got a lot to learn. We all do. The room fell quiet again, and I took a moment to absorb what had just happened. They were trying, but I knew there was still more work to do. The apology had to be more than just words. It had to be a change in the way they saw me. But I also had to set some boundaries. I'll accept your apologies, I said, looking each of them in the eye. But I need more than just respect for what I do or what I've achieved. I need respect for who I am, not just for my status or what I can give you. If you want to have a real relationship with me, it's not about seeing me as the successful one or the one with the money. It's about seeing me, not the person you thought I was. Layla's eyes softened, and I saw a flicker of something in her. Guilt, sure, but maybe also hope. Do you think, do you think there's a chance for us to start fresh? I mean, I want to really know you. I want to be there for you, not just for the title you've earned. I paused for a long time, letting the question sink in. She wanted to start fresh. But could I? Could I trust them again? I think we can, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully. But it'll take time. I'm not going to just jump back into the way things were. It's going to be slow, but I'm willing to try. We all have to start seeing each other for who we really are, not just what we want to see. Layla nodded, the beginnings of a real, honest connection forming between us. Okay, she said, her voice a little steadier. I can do that. I'll be patient. I smiled a little, feeling something inside me finally start to loosen. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, something real. I wasn't sure yet, but I was willing to find out. The party had finally started to wind down, but the energy in the room was still buzzing, just in a different way. The guests had shifted from small talk to serious networking, and I found myself in the middle of a conversation with an executive from a major tech company. He was asking about our next big project, and his eyes lit up when I mentioned our plans to scale our tech consulting work into new markets. I'd love to set up a meeting to discuss potential partnerships, he said, pulling out his business card. This is exactly the kind of thing we've been looking for. I took the card, smiling and nodding. A few others were already lining up to talk to me, some asking about our foundation, others eager to hear about the tech side of things. For the first time, it felt like they weren't just talking to me because they thought they had to. They were genuinely interested. As I shifted away from the group, I spotted Layla in the corner, still watching me. She was standing by the coat rack, fiddling with her phone, but her eyes followed me as I moved through the room. I approached her, my mind still buzzing with the conversations I'd just had. So, I said, breaking the silence, you've been quiet for a while. Everything okay? Layla glanced up at me, then at my outfit, a simple black sweater, dark jeans, and sneakers. For the first time all night, she seemed to be really seeing me. Her eyes narrowed, and I saw that familiar look of suspicion. Wait, she said, eyeing me like I was hiding something. Are those clothes from a clearance rack? Is that where you've been shopping all this time? Her tone was almost amused, like she thought she'd figured it out. I paused, feeling that familiar pull of wanting to make her see something she still didn't understand. Actually, no, I said, smiling just a little. None of this is from a clearance rack. She blinked, clearly thrown off. What? Then where? I gestured down at myself, pointing out the details. The sweater is custom made, actually. The jeans are from a boutique that only does small runs of high-end sustainable stuff. And the shoes? Designer. Just not flashy. I shrugged casually. I don't need my clothes to scream, "Look at me." I'd rather let my work do that. Layla's face froze. She glanced at me up and down again, as if waiting for the punchline. But there was none. She was still processing the words, her mind trying to piece together a reality where I didn't fit the mold she'd built for me. Wait, she said again, her voice low. You've been wearing designer clothes this whole time and I never noticed? I nodded, not trying to rub it in, but not ashamed either. You wouldn't have. I don't wear labels for the attention. I wear what feels right for me. It's not about the brand name. It's about what works and what's comfortable. I don't need to flaunt it to feel secure. Layla opened and closed her mouth a few times, clearly processing this new information. Then finally she sighed, a small laugh escaping her lips. I guess I've still got a lot to learn, huh? I couldn't help but smile. Yeah, you do, but that's the good part. She chuckled, the sound light and a little unsure, like she was trying to find the humor in all of it. I never thought you'd be the one teaching me anything. Life's funny like that, I said. We all have our lessons to learn, whether we realize it or not. She nodded, a little more contemplative now, her eyes softer. I don't know where I went wrong, or why I couldn't see you before. I'm sorry for everything I said. You're not the only one who's learning, I reminded her gently. We all make assumptions, but it's about breaking through them, right? She smiled faintly, and I could see that the walls between us were starting to crumble, bit by bit. She still had a long way to go, but maybe now she could see me for who I was, beyond the clothes, beyond the business, beyond what they thought I should be. Yeah, she said quietly, I think we're both learning. I drove home that night with the windows down, the cool air rushing through the car, mixing with the quiet hum of the road. The lights of the city flickered past, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from everything being perfect. It wasn't about the success or the validation. It was something else, something deeper. I thought about how quickly everything had changed, how fast people could shift when the truth hit them. My family, who had been so sure of who I was, so sure I was nothing more than an underachiever, had just had their entire perception of me flipped upside down. Layla, Max, even mom and dad, all of them now seeing me as something different. And I couldn't help but wonder, how much of what we think we know is just based on assumptions, the stories we tell ourselves to make the world fit into neat little boxes? As I turned onto the street where my apartment was, I couldn't help but smile a little. It wasn't a fancy place, but it was mine. It was enough. The small, cozy space where I could breathe without having to play a part for anyone else. I was grateful for it, grateful for the life I'd built here, away from all the expectations, away from the judgment. I barely set my keys down before my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, surprised to see a message from Layla. Hey, I've been thinking, can we grab coffee tomorrow? I want to hear more about your foundation and what you're really doing. I want to listen this time. I stared at the message for a long moment, a mix of disbelief and hope building inside me. She wanted to listen. She wasn't just trying to fix things or apologize anymore. She was really asking. I smiled to myself and typed back quickly. Sure, how about 10 a.m.? The next morning, I met Layla at a cafe downtown. She was already there when I walked in, sipping on a latte, looking like she'd been up for hours. She stood when she saw me, her face softer than I'd seen it in a long time. No judgment, just curiosity. Thanks for meeting me, she said, her voice quieter than usual. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About everything, really. I nodded and sat down across from her, my hands wrapped around my coffee cup. I'm glad you're here. I know it's a lot to process. She leaned forward, her gaze serious. It is. But I want to hear more. I want to understand what you're doing with the foundation. I had no idea how much work you were putting into it. I didn't understand how much you were really giving. I could see she was genuinely trying to listen now, not just waiting for her turn to speak. We talked for over an hour, and I shared the details of the foundation, how it was slowly gaining traction, and how we were working with schools in underserved communities. For the first time, Layla wasn't just hearing the words. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the understanding settling in. A few months later, Layla came to me with a proposition. I've been thinking about it, she said one afternoon over lunch, and I want to help. I want to be involved with the foundation on a bigger level. I want to be part of it. My eyes narrowed in surprise. What do you mean? I want to work with you, she said, her tone steady. I want to be the director of community programs. I've learned so much about the impact you're having, and I think I can help. I want to give back in a way that actually means something. I sat back, stunned. Layla, my sister who'd spent years judging me, was offering to join the very thing I'd built, to help others, to be part of something bigger than herself. Are you serious? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Yeah, she said with a small smile. I think I finally get it. It wasn't just her. 3 months later, Max came to me, asking if I could help him transition into tech consulting, something he'd always wanted to do, but never really committed to. And while it wasn't easy, I helped him make that move. It felt like everything was shifting. Like the foundation I'd built wasn't just changing communities, it was changing the people closest to me, too. Mom and dad stopped making assumptions. They started asking more questions, really trying to understand what I was doing and why it mattered. They still didn't fully get it, but they were trying. And that was enough for me. Ethan still wore his sneakers to family events, now proudly, and every time I saw him slip them on, it made me smile. He didn't have to change for anyone, and he made sure I knew that. As for me, I didn't need a big party or a pile of gifts to feel special anymore. The best birthday gift I'd ever received wasn't money or a shiny new thing. It was being seen. Not for the clothes I wore or the things I had, but for the work I was doing, the life I had built. For me. I looked out the window of my apartment, the sun dipping below the skyline, and realized, maybe for the first time, I was exactly where I needed to be. The changes that came after that night felt subtle at first, like the shifting of a tide too slow to see until you were already standing in the middle of it. But then, as the weeks passed, I began to feel the weight of it, the freedom of no longer having to prove myself, the space to just be. The company was still growing, of course. We were hitting milestones and securing deals I never could have imagined just a year ago. But my focus had shifted. I spent more time on the foundation, figuring out how to reach more communities, how to expand our impact. The work felt more meaningful, more real now, than the pursuit of any new contract or business deal. The family dynamics had changed too. Layla, with her new role, was more involved. She'd finally stopped seeing me as someone she needed to fix or guide, and started seeing me as someone she could learn from. Max was knee-deep in tech consulting, finally stepping into the career he'd always talked about but never taken seriously. And Mom and Dad? They were quieter now, not as quick to offer advice or judge. They asked questions, real ones, like they were trying to understand who I was and what I stood for. There was still distance, of course. I wasn't going to pretend everything was perfect. But the walls had come down. We were building something new. Together. I glanced over at the desk in the corner of my apartment, where my laptop sat open. A photo of me and Ethan at a recent event was on the screen, both of us smiling, a little tired but proud. It was one of those moments where I felt like we were building something that wasn't just ours. It was bigger than that. I smiled at the photo, then clicked through to check my messages. One popped up, and I didn't recognize the name. Your name came up in a city council meeting. Let's talk. I stared at it for a moment, then set the phone down. My chest tightened just a little, but it wasn't fear. It was excitement, opportunity, the kind of opportunity that mattered, the kind I didn't have to chase or prove I was worthy of anymore. I stood up from my chair and grabbed my jacket, my hand lingering on the edge of my laptop for a moment. The city was calling. There was more work to do, more communities to reach, and maybe now, just maybe, I could finally build something that mattered beyond the business world. Still in jeans, still grounded. I closed the laptop, tucked it into my bag, and headed out the door. Life wasn't about performing success, it was about doing the work that really mattered. And I was ready for what came next.